that keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I want to talk about the 49ers offense against the Houston Texans defense. Because if there's a matchup in this game that means the most, that's what it's going to be. Can the 49ers offense score enough points against the number one ranked defense in the NFL? And you might be saying, hey, didn't I just hear that about the Atlanta Falcons last week? Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons were one of the best defenses, especially when it came to pass defense, the best when it came to yards against. But the Houston Texans are in a different category. They're the best when it comes to not allowing points. They give up just over 14.7 points per game. That's number one in the NFL. And the name of the game is stopping your opponent from scoring when they get their opportunities. And that's what Houston's doing. And DeMeco Ryans is the big reason why. DeMeco Ryans has built a defense in Houston that can get after the quarterback, that can stop the run, that's effective creating turnovers, and they're really tough to be able to consistently convert on third down against, which 49ers are pretty darn good on offense converting third downs. In fact, 49ers, over 47% of the time, they convert on third down. It's number two in the entire NFL. They are doing their part to make sure that they are consistent on third down. So this is going to be an interesting matchup because you have all the makings of a real slugfest. And what's interesting about it is the other side of the ball, where the Houston Texans offense, they're average, and the 49ers defense has played above average, but they match up really well, right? Offensive line for Houston, not very good. 49ers defensive line ravaged by injuries, not really being able to generate pressure consistently. Kind of evens out. You got some injuries in the secondary for 49ers, injuries at wide receiver for the Houston Texans. You can find balance, and it's kind of an interesting matchup there. But this is going to be the reason why the 49ers win the game or lose the game, is going to be how their offenses perform, or how their offense performs against DeMeco Ryans' defense. It's just that simple. So we're going to go through it. We're going to talk about the key matchups. We're going to talk about what the 49ers need to do to be able to attack the Houston Texans. It's different than last week. It's different than a lot of the games that the 49ers have went and played this year so far. They're not seeing a 3-4 defense. They're seeing a 4-3. They haven't seen very many 4-3s, but they're going to see not a carbon copy, but a familiar look when they look across the field and see a very talented Houston Texans defense. And then DeMeco Ryans is one of the best when it comes to making those calls and pulling strings and do what he's supposed to do. So please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. They're the title sponsor of 49ers Cutback. So let's get right into it. And it has to start with the 49ers run game. And the 49ers run game just got going. And it was really struggling for the first part of this season. And then last week, it bounced back. And I've said this before. A big reason why is the Atlanta Falcons defense. Number one, the design of the defense leaves the 49ers with some opportunities. Number two, George Kittle came back to really help where the weaknesses of the Atlanta Falcons defense was, which was the size of those edge defenders and being able to kind of get some movement on them, push them out, kick them out. And so that played into the 49ers' hands. And then Kyle Shanahan really drew up some very good plays. Him and Chris Furster came through with a really good run game and run game plan. Now, what can you do against the Houston Texans? Houston Texans are a team that allows you to get some yards on the ground. Now, it's not a lot, but to kind of give you an idea, the 49ers right now, their defense gives up 100 yards per game, and they have been getting steadily better as Alfred Collins and C.J. West and some of their young guys get better along the defensive front. Mikael Williams gets more growth playing in the NFL, so they allow 100. The Houston Texans allow 95 yards per game on the ground, and Houston does a really good job. Like 95 is a good number. But you can see that there's an opportunity here to run the football against the Houston Texans. Last week, Seattle was able to go over 115 yards on the ground. They were able to establish a run game against the Houston Texans, and that's going to be extremely important again. And like I said on the show that I did with John Chapman yesterday, don't expect for the 49ers to go off for 150 yards on the ground and Christian McCaffrey duplicate his performance, get 129, 130 yards. I don't think that's in the cards. I think the Houston Texans, as far as defense, it's better than Atlanta at stopping the run. But I do think the 49ers can come near 100 to 115 yards on the ground. I think that they've got the opportunity to do so because of the way that Kyle Shanahan's willing to stick with it. But I think there's going to be, some of these times where you get 2, 3, 5, 7. You're just going to have to continue to stick with the run game. But why it's so important is, number one, you can somewhat wear down that Houston Texans defense as the game goes on. You need to, because they have elite pass rushers on the outside. If you are going to allow Danielle Hunter, if you're going to allow Will Anderson, if you're going to allow a guy like Autry in the inside to just get penetration and be able to get after your quarterback on 3rd and 8, you're going to be in trouble. But what you're hoping is you can slowly wear them down with a consistent running game, conversions on 3rd down, which are going to be difficult against a defense that's almost elite at stopping you on 3rd down. They only give up conversions at 32%, which is one of the best. Now, Atlanta was in the same category. In fact, last week, Atlanta only gave up 3rd down conversions at 32%. So here the 49ers are against another really good defense getting off the field. But attacking in the run game is going to be important, because it's really important, even though Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson are good at stopping the run. They're better than what you saw last week against Atlanta. Guys like Arnold Ebiketie really struggle with it. Leonard Floyd is good at times. Sometimes he struggles. But you have to continue to be able to run at this Texans team. And you look on the inside, and they are absolute studs on the inside of this defense. Sheldon Rankins, Tim Settle, these are big, monstrous guys on the inside. They're going to make it difficult. And the rotation doesn't exactly get easy either. They bring in a guy like Mario Edwards or Derek Barnett off the edge, or Danico Autry, and they're bringing in guys that can continue to bring pressure on the inside, whether it's in the run game or the passing game. So getting movement on the inside is okay, or it's tough. But you find a bubble. And I talk about this every week, especially when I do my breakdowns over on Patreon. You find the bubble in the defense and you attack it. And with a 4-man front, you're going to find it. Now, they have good linebackers as well. They got EJ Speed. They got, of course, Azeez Al-Shire. And we all know how good Al-Shire is. And then, they've got some other talented guys as well. Now, I went back and I watched the Rams game. I went back and watched the Jaguars game. I went back and watched them play the Seattle Seahawks last week. And you're going to see similar run game, especially from Seattle to San Francisco, because you've got Clint Kubiak and what he likes to do on the ground. It's not that far off from a 49ers offense that wants to marry run game and pass game together as far as concepts and looks. However, I think that this week the 49ers want to put Houston in some situations where they're not in nickel, where they're not in their nickel set. So I don't know how many 3 wide receiver sets we're going to see from the 49ers. I think we'll see some. I just don't think it's going to be at the rate it was during the first part of the season. Now that George Kittle's back, I think it does mean the 49ers need to run more 12 and 21 personnel than they've ran in weeks past. Now, last week they went to a lot of 21 personnel, a ton, because you had Kyle Juszczyk, you had George Kittle. And I think that gives you an advantage against the Houston Texans, because teams have been trying to play the 49ers 2 different ways. You either, when the 49ers are in their 11 personnel, they play, their normal nickel set, or they'll play like a big safety. Well, teams like Seattle Seahawks have said, even when the 49ers are in 21 personnel, we're going to put a third safety out there. And I think that's what the Houston Texans are going to do with Jalen Petrie. Jalen Petrie, I believe, is going to be out there no matter what. I think he's going to be their nickel corner when you go 11 personnel. And I think he's going to be your third guy in the box as far as linebacker in base sets, and not bring on an extra linebacker for the most part, unless it's as short yardage, against your 21 and 12 personnel. And why do I believe that? Well, there's some matchup issues for the Houston Texans if you get their linebackers lined up and matched up against George Kittle or Christian McCaffrey. might be a little bit easier if you have Jalen Petrie hanging around the box, or you can get Kalen Bullock to kind of hang around the box. Those guys are better matchups. We just saw Atlanta Falcons matching up, Xavier Watts one-on-one with Christian McCaffrey instead of a linebacker, and then going ahead and bracket coveraging George Kittle. I think similar things are going to happen. Now, I do believe that DeMeco Ryans is going to try to take away Christian McCaffrey a little bit more than Atlanta did last week, and there could be some opportunities for George Kittle in the passing game. But in the run game, I think at 11 personnel, Jalen Petrie's a little bit of a disadvantage against the 49ers wide receivers. I think he's too good stopping the run that it doesn't really behoove you. It's not really advantageous to go ahead and run 11 personnel and get a smaller nickel on the field, because you're not going to get a smaller nickel. So it makes more sense to go bigger. Let's get Kyle Juszczyk. Let's get George Kittle. Let's get bigger bodies against Jalen Petrie. Let's get bigger bodies against Azeez Al-Shaair and EJ Speed. Let's get bigger bodies against Kalen Bullock. So I think that 21 and 12 personnel are very important this week, and I think they create matchups in the running game. 49ers also need to make sure that it's about getting upfield and getting vertical. Don't get too caught up in the window dressing that's going to allow the edge defenders who are super fast, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, to crash down the line of scrimmage and be able to make plays where they chase down McCaffrey from behind. So yes, it's okay to run the outside zone like you normally do, but you don't have as much time to dance or play in the backfield. You've got to see it, you've got to press it, and you've got to get vertical. And so I think that this is going to be an interesting matchup, but I do think the 49ers can run the ball consistently against the Houston Texans. I think they'll even have a couple of plays that burst for 10 plus yards. I do think that is in the cards, but it's going to take a complete effort. It's going to take personnel groupings that work. And part of the reason Houston slowed down the Rams so much is because the Rams are stuck in 11 personnel and they couldn't come out of it. And Matthew Stafford struggled, and Jalen Petrie helped stop the run. So I really think that that's going to be one of the key factors in this football game. But I think the 49ers can do it. There's a bubble in this defense. You can attack the inside shade of those ends, and that means when you're running your outside zone, now you've got to get bodies on Al-Shaair. You've got to get bodies on EJ Speed. You've got to take advantage of them. And DeMeco Ryans is more than likely going to bring an eighth man in the box. One thing DeMeco does not like to do is give up the run. He doesn't like a team coming in and consistently running the football on him. That was one of the stark differences right away when he took over the defense from Robert Saleh, is the defense went from being average stopping the run, which, there's give and take. Robert Saleh is willing to give some rush yards to be able to get stops, get the third down. DeMeco, he wants to slam the door on your run game. So he will be more aggressive, bringing a safety up in the box. And so it's going to come down to Mac Jones as well, being able to see that and then get to the right play. But I do think the 49ers can force some 8-man boxes with a consistent run game and then put the pressure on DeMeco Ryans to load the box. Now let's talk about FanDuel. The 49ers right now are a 2.5-point underdog. So the number has jumped a little bit. 49ers were a 1.5, but it's went up a little bit. So a little bit of a change. Still hasn't reached 3 quite yet. So you got that. The money line is plus 118 on the 49ers, and the over-under is 41.5. They have lots of cool bets, player props. They've got a 4-leg same-game parlay right now for anytime touchdowns for Dalton Schultz, Woody Marks, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. If they all score touchdowns, it's at plus 38.49. So a $10 wager gets you $384.96. So if you're interested in betting, go check it out. FanDuel has a lot of cool bets and things that you can bet on. So if you're going to bet with FanDuel. Well, let's talk about Christian McCaffrey, because we found every single week he's a mismatch against the opposing linebackers. And I think it's the same way this week. I have a lot of respect for Azeez Al-Shaair, especially. I have a lot of respect for EJ Speed as well, but I like Al-Shaair. But Al-Shaair is not covering Christian McCaffrey one-on-one in space. That's part of the reason I think the Texans are going to go with a 3-safety look, is try to find some times they can cover Christian McCaffrey with a safety. They can also blitz Mac Jones with that safety. I think it leaves them a little bit more freedom. But they can't go into this game thinking EJ Speed and Azeez Al-Shaair matched up one-on-one with Christian McCaffrey is a good look. he's going to chew them up and spit them out. He's going to put them in a grinder when it comes to these routes and pass routes that he can run. So I don't think that that's the case. And I think this is an advantage for the 49ers. And it's this simple for Mac Jones. If they are leaning towards Christian McCaffrey with coverage, you're going to George Kittle more than likely. And if they're trying to take away both, third and Juwan, Kendrick Bourne, like these guys can still go make plays. And who knows? You're forgetting about a guy like Kyle Juszczyk, and he could still be a mismatch as well. He should have had more yards last week. He ran some really good routes and was open, and he just didn't get the ball. So I think that this is going to be one of the key factors in this game is you get the run game going, and then you kind of build the play action off of it. But there's some real mismatches for Christian McCaffrey when it comes to linebacker. As Al Shire's one of the best, but he's not in the class of covering Christian McCaffrey. There's very few linebackers that can. That's going to be a very difficult matchup for them. And if you can find even other matchups, there's other ones as well that can be very difficult. Now, George Kittle versus the safeties is going to be interesting. I don't know how many times they're going to cover him with Jalen Petrie. I don't know exactly what they're going to do there. Jalen Petrie, a lot of times, will play the nickel, and he's very good. This is a safety skill guy that can cover in the slot, and he does a really good job. He's physical. He plays tough. He's got good hand-eye coordination, so he finds the ball, gets in and out of his breaks really well, drives on the football. He's also physical with players and physical as far as tackling. But when you get George Kittle in a situation where you get him on linebackers, it's a win, right? So if they want to go take Christian McCaffrey away and you get George Kittle on linebackers, it's an automatic win. I also think it's an advantage for the 49ers when they get George Kittle on Kalen Bullock or MJ Stewart. Because George Kittle, route running, ability to create separation, he's going to be able to do it. So right now the 49ers have two guys that I feel can be matchup problems inside the passing game. And I think that that's the real advantage. I think Derek Stingley on the outside is going to do a good job against whoever he's against. He's going to be tough to throw on. I think on the other side, Kamari Lassiter's a little bit easier to attack, especially with zone, right? There's some opportunities for the 49ers to find some windows in zone. But Lassiter, he can cover it pretty well. I wouldn't say he's the best corner in the league, but he's definitely a guy that can compete. I'm a fan of Kamari Lassiter. So I think that this is going to be interesting, Kittle versus Bullock and Stewart. Because while all the battles are happening on the outside and while they're worried about where Christian McCaffrey is, George Kittle's probably going to get some favorable looks. And like I said, it's a pick your poison. You decide to take away Christian McCaffrey, you're probably leaving George Kittle in an advantageous situation to get open. And if you decide to take away George Kittle, you're probably leaving Christian McCaffrey in that situation. And if you decide to take away both, that means you're going to get a matchup you like for one of your other receivers. Is it Kyle Juszczyk? Is it Juwan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne, Demarcus Robinson? Somebody can find a opening. Now that it requires Mac Jones to decipher the coverage and get rid of the football on time. But I think that there's some opportunities there. And there's going to be a lot of things that he's going to have to deal with because he does have to deal with pass rush coming from the outside, pass rush coming from the middle. And the 49ers offensive line hasn't exactly been the best when it comes to holding up in pass protection. Now they've done enough, right? Again, last week they held just one sack in that football game, and it was the first play of the game. So they have been able to hold up. Can they do it again? Well, if they can, they're going to give opportunities to George Kittle. This is a great matchup for him in this game. Great matchups for Christian McCaffrey as well. But let's talk about this offensive line against the Texans pass rush. Because if there was a place that you looked and you're like, wow, they have an advantage, it has to start with that pass rush. Danielle Hunter, number one, is just an absolute savage. Ever since he's been with Minnesota, he's been a real problem. He's just one of the premier pass rushers in this league. He deserved the contract he got. I would have loved to have him on San Francisco. He's just a really good player, dedicated, and can get the job done. Will Anderson is a complete speed guy that they used a second overall pick on, who's done a fantastic job getting after the quarterbacks. It was second or third. I can't remember for sure overall. But the reason that they're tough to deal with is because you have to give help. And every single film I watched, it was pretty consistent. They had to give help. And usually it was on the left side. They usually had to give help to the guy who was right there dealing with Danielle Hunter. But the 49ers have Trent Williams. How much will they chip? And we've seen the 49ers chip a little bit this season, I think with mixed results. Sometimes I think it actually affected the timing of the kick slide of Trent Williams or the kick slide of Colt McKivitz, where you had guys who were supposed to help and they whiffed. And then all of a sudden, you've got Trent Williams trying to scramble to get there because he was trying to give a little help on the inside because of the design of the play. But this is one of those premier matchups, right? This is blue chip on blue chip. Trent Williams versus Danielle Hunter. And if Trent Williams can hold up against Danielle Hunter, I can't tell you Danielle Hunter's not going to get home because he's really good. And I think that there's a chance that he might get home and get a sack on Mac Jones at some point. But if Trent Williams could hold up and prevent that from happening and make it so the 49ers don't have to give help, I would say the 49ers offensive line can hold up. Because on the other side, they can give help. Will Anderson against Colton McKivitz. And I don't think this is a great matchup for Colton McKivitz. Just from what we've seen this year, speed kills when it comes to Colton McKivitz. Now, especially when it came to Byron Young, right, and Jared Verse and those guys for the Los Angeles Rams, they were the real problems for McKivitz. And he had problems with the Jacksonville Jaguars a little bit as well. But I think that this is one of those speed matchups and speed to power matchups that could give him a problem. So I do think giving Colt McKivitz help is going to be important. But I think one of the main things you want to do in this game is run the football. If there's an area you could take advantage of Will Anderson in, it's getting movement and pushing him off the line of scrimmage in the run game. So you have to make sure it's 3rd and short so you can get rid of the football. If you have to hold on the football and convert on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, that's going to make it tough for McKivitz to go against Will Anderson. And there's going to be sometimes you can't chip. There's going to be sometimes you can't give help, that you can't double, because you've got to watch the guys on the inside as well. Like I said, they got Sheldon Rankins, they got Tim Settle, they got Mario Edwards, they got Derek Barnett, Danico Autry. They've got pass rushers. And if they can get an interior pass rush, it's going to make it even more complicated. This could be ugly if the 49ers can't get a run game going. It could put Mac Jones in some precarious situations. And we don't want him to, number one, get sacked or get hit too much. We've seen, he's been beat up before. But we also don't want him to get rid of the football before he wants to or before he needs to, or he's prone to turn over the football a little bit. So this is going to be one of those keys. And you've already got decisions to make on the interior part of the offensive line. Connor Kobe struggled a little bit when it comes to pass protection. You've got a new center with Matt Hennessy. How is he going to do? I thought he did okay last week. Can he build upon that performance? It's going to be another, like I said, tough battle on the inside. And then you have Dominic Pooney, who hasn't looked the way he looked last year. So this is going to be a tough one for the 49ers offensive line across the board. And that's why giving help to Colt McKivitz is going to be relying on tight ends. It's going to be relying on running backs. They're going to have to give help. That's part of the reason I like 21 personnel. I like Kyle Juszczyk coming up and giving a chip, or George Kittle giving a check, or Christian McCaffrey, and kind of freeing some things up. And I think early success in the run game could definitely help. But this is going to be tough, and it's not just going to be a 4-man pressure all the time. DeMeco Ryans will dial it up. If he gets the situation he likes and the look he likes, get ready. Somebody's coming, and it's going to be a safety or a linebacker, and it's going to be difficult. And expect them to attack Connor Kobe with line stunts. If there's one thing that Connor Kobe has struggled with this season, it's been line stunts. I thought over the last 2 weeks he's been a little bit better, but that's still an area that they could attack him. But how do the 49ers overall have success against the Texans offense? Get to the red zone. So Houston only gives up 14.7 points per game. But the interesting part about them is they're not as good in the red zone. They give up touchdowns inside the red zone at 66% of the time. Now, that's not terrible. The 49ers are sitting at 60%, and that is number 10 in the NFL. But that extra 6% does matter. And last week, the 49ers were 2 for 2 in the red zone. And it felt like the 49ers offense is getting a little bit better when it comes to red zone offense. They're all the way up to 48%, up from 42% a couple weeks ago. So what we're seeing is a upward trend for the 49ers offense, and make no mistake, they started running the football in the red zone. Back-to-back weeks with touchdowns on the ground inside the red zone. 1 and then 2 last week. So what we're seeing is the 49ers becoming more well-rounded in the red zone. Now, George Kittle came back last week. That made an impact. But Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers offense were finding lanes to run the football. This is going to be one of the key things. One thing about the Houston Texans, you can move the football on them early. You can get the ball across midfield. But once you do, that is the part in which DeMeco Ryans decides no more. He goes from bend and don't break to we're attacking and we're getting after you. And what he does is he causes long field goal attempts, or he just gets you off the field and causes a punt. So the 49ers need to get to the red zone. The key is to get from that 40 to that 20. And that's going to be the toughest 20 yards for the 49ers. If they're effective in doing so, they've got a really good chance to score touchdowns against this Houston Texans defense. But it all requires getting there. And you look at the 49ers offense on third down this year. I brought it up earlier. 47.5% they convert on third down. That is going to be one of the keys to make sure you get there. But you got that elite Houston Texans defense on third down that only gives up conversions at 32%. But like I brought up, last week Atlanta was sitting at 32%, and the 49ers went well up over 50%. When you do that, you put the other team in a precarious situation. But how do you do that? You run the ball effectively. That's how the 49ers can keep themselves in this situation, run the ball effectively. But you got to take what they're giving you. It is absolutely important for Mac Jones to take what the defense is giving. You can't force things against DeMeco Ryans in this defense. Last week, they created 4 turnovers against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, their offense was ineffective, so they still lost. And they still gave up 27 points. But they had an opportunity to win that game because of the turnover. So taking advantage of the opportunities that are there are important. Whether that is going downfield, sometimes you have to do that. Whether that's take the check down. And everything has got to be an extension of the run game. And we heard Kyle Shanahan talk about this a couple weeks ago when he said, people were like, hey, you're passing too much. And he's like, what are you talking about? That's basically the run. Because he's taking what the defense is giving. And I don't think it's going to be as simple as the Houston Texans are going to sit back and allow 49ers to check it underneath. I think they're going to mix it up. I think they're going to mix coverages. I think they're going to mix blitzes. I think they're going to mix line stunts. DeMeco Ryans is going to come through with a formidable game plan to attack Mac Jones and attack the 49ers' weaknesses. It's going to be the 49ers' job to decipher what those are and take advantage of it. I have a lot of faith in Kyle Shanahan. I have a lot of faith in Chris Foerster and how they're going to attack the Houston Texans. I don't think this is going to be an easy game to win. I think the 49ers offense is going to have to succeed in scoring some points. And I think that getting to 20 points is going to be one of those keys. If you get to 20, you're in the game and you got a shot to win. That's going to be tough sledding against a team that only allows 14.7 points per game. So I think that this is going to be a fun one. I think you got to lean heavily on Christian McCaffrey in the run game and in the passing game. You got to lean heavily on George Kittle and finding opportunities, and then see how they're playing you when it comes to Jalen Petrie. Anytime that they're putting Petrie on McCaffrey or George Kittle, that's when one of those wide receivers needs to step up and make a play. And it doesn't matter which one. Jawan Jennings, Demarcus Robinson, Kendrick Bourne, it doesn't matter. They need to make timely catches. And they're going to have some favorable matchups. They can't cover everyone that you have as far as weapons. If they're paying a lot of attention to Kittle and McCaffrey, it's going to open things up for those wide receivers. But expect to see a lot of 21 and 12 personnel, especially 21 personnel with Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle. That is your best run attacking unit. But it's also the biggest mismatch for the 49ers when it comes to the passing game as well. If they go big and they bring on an extra linebacker, like Henry Tutuotu. I know I'm butchering his name, but I'm just saying, if they bring him on, expect the 49ers to throw the football in those situations. 8-man boxes from DeMeco Ryans will not deter the 49ers from running the football. They'll count the numbers. All that stuff, like I said, available on Patreon. If you want to hear how the 49ers can still run against the 8-man box, that's available on Patreon as well. So it's going to be a fun game. I think the 49ers and Houston Texans is going to be a battle. Guys who really respect each other as coaches. I expect the 49ers offense to play well. I don't expect it to blow the doors off the Houston Texans, but I expect them to play well enough to be in position to win this football game on the road at Houston. It's going to be great. Tomorrow, the game preview show, we're going to go through all of the key matchups. We're going to get into the predictions We're going to talk about the bold predictions as well, which, hit and miss, but, last couple weeks have been doing decent on those. And so all that still coming your way. And I'll catch you guys the next one. Actually, please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Listening audio platform 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.